Let's do some more conference committee appointments here. Senate File 32, Joint Conference Committee Number 1 on, so it'll be Senate File 32, Unpaved Roads Speed Limits Amendments. Conference Committee Number 1 will be Senators Pappas, Chair, Senators Kolb and Rothfuss. Joint Conference Committee Number 1, the Senate File 84, Country of Origin Label USA Beef. Senator Steinmetz, Chair, Senators Case and Kolb. Reports from standing committees.
February 21, 2025. Mr. President, Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 235 engrossed. Career Technical Education Equipment and Supplies, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Guru, Salazar, and Smith. Excuse Senators Driscoll and Larson. Senator Salazar, Chairman. Committee Number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 192 engrossed. Public Utilities, Wildfire Mitigation, and Liability Limits. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Boner, Case, Dockstader, and Landon. Excuse Senator Steinmetz. Senator Case, Chairman. Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 125, Repeal Unauthorized Use of Vehicle Crime. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Craigo, Crum, Hicks, Kolb, and Olson. Senator Olson, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Madam Majority Floor Leader, we are at that order of business. Consideration of bills on general file.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate resolve itself into Committee of the Whole.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Motion carries. Call on the good senator from Natrona County, the golden senator, Mr. Gold himself, Senator Ide. Come on down. Yeah, you got this. Good luck.
Yeah, there's one right there. Committee of the Whole come to order. First bill for, let's see, where do I go here? The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 242. Will the reading clerk read in the bill? House Bill.
House Bill 242, Manufacturers and Dealers of New Trailers Changes, an act relating to motor vehicles. Oh, beg your pardon?
Sorry about that, I had it right here. I'm sorry, we had one here and one there, and I grabbed the one on top. So the first bill for our consideration is House Bill 289. The reading clerk will read the House Bill.
House Bill 289, Certificate of Need Repeal 3, an act relating to public health and safety sponsored by Representative Geringer, was referred to Committee Number 1, which is under committee recommendation that do pass amended. Ayes Senators Craigo, Crum, Hicks, Kolb, and Olson. Senator Craigo, acting chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Let's see here. Right. Where'd you go? What's that?
Chair.
There? What's that? Senator Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Make you stand there all afternoon.
It's all right. Stretch my legs a little. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 289 do pass. There is a standing committee amendment, which I would ask to be read in.
House Bill 289, Standing Committee Amendment number 1, page 3, line 1, delete.
And I would move standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 289. And members, just making sure you're awake, I'm actually going to ask that you vote no on this standing committee amendment. What this does is it changes the effective date, but between the institutions that are involved in this legislation having a delayed enactment date is actually a bit of a compromise with those institutions. So we actually, committee got out in front of its skis, as the good senator from Natrona County likes to say, and made this amendment, and now we want to back away from that. So ask you to vote no.
Question? Let's see. All those in favor of Senator Olson's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 289, say aye. Those opposed? No. That has failed. Clearly. Senator Olson.
All right, I think we proved most of us are awake. All right, now I will turn over the explanation of the bill, Mr. Chairman, to Senator Crum.
Senator Crum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was a good vote. Just please don't do it again on this next vote. Would like to recommend that we adopt this amendment. It's on certificate of need repeal for long-term care. And what does that mean? It means that right now our long-term care facilities, nursing homes and the like, have a certificate of need that they've got to come in and file if there's a need for additional beds in the community. Right now, it's really tough to get additional beds in your community. This certificate of need was a federal law. It was repealed in 1987. It's been repealed by most states in the country, but not Wyoming yet. And so what this does, this bill will allow us to have competition within the long-term care industry. For those nursing homes that are doing a great job, receiving high scores as far as quality, I'm sure they'll be just fine. For those nursing homes that maybe are just barely meeting minimum standard, it's going to allow them the opportunity to grow and get better and improve their facilities. And where there's a market need, it'll allow free enterprise to come in and do more long-term care beds in their facility. Right now, unless a nursing home or long-term care facility exceeds 85% of occupancy on an ongoing basis, then you can't build a new bed. And so it really has created monopolies around the state in certain areas that new nursing homes can't be built and we can't get new long-term beds. So it's a very simple bill to repeal that certificate of need. It's going to increase competition. It's going to make things better in our long-term healthcare industry. And so I would recommend approval of this bill and stand for questions.
Mr. Chairman, this is a bill with major, and I mean major, financial implications for the state of Wyoming, and will, I think, in the long run, hit our general fund on a major scale. So, Mr. Chairman, this is one we better pay careful attention to. This is a bill we wouldn't have this kind of restriction. We wouldn't need this bill, but it'd make a lot of sense for this bill if this was a free market. But it is not. This is a bill that affects a market that is dominated, Mr. Chairman, by the government. The nursing home market is largely Medicaid. That's how most of Wyoming goes to the nursing home, is on the Medicaid program. Medicaid sets the rates for about 64% of the business of the nursing homes. There's a further government business in here that they do a fair amount of Medicare work in the rehab area, and then there's some private pay. And the way it works, Mr. Chairman, is that in most of the nursing homes now, there's a cost shift because they charge the private pay patients more in order to make up for the fact that the Medicaid program does not pay the full cost. And that's typical of the way Medicaid work. There's nothing unusual about that. It's just typical Medicaid. What will happen if this bill passes, Mr. Chairman, is that the first thing that will happen is right now, you can't build a new nursing home in the major communities in our state. What's there is too close to capacity. I think you'll see nursing home builds in the larger communities, including the one right here, that will refuse to accept Medicaid patients. They will have a nice new nursing home. They will staff it better. They will probably charge a little more than is charged now, but it'll be well worth it. And most of the extra revenue they'll get will be from avoiding the Medicare cost shift, Mr. Chairman. And that will mean that for the other nursing homes in the community, either they're going to go broke or we're going to have to pay more out of the general fund. And the feds do match that 50-50, but it'll hit the general fund on a fair scale as we make up for the loss of the cost shifting revenue. My guess, and it's just a guess, I think the order of magnitude is that's probably another 10 million a year, Mr. Chairman. Significant. But then as time goes on, you'll see a spread around the state where you're getting new nursing homes in, out competing the old ones, and you will see more capacity. They will go marketing, and that's where the major increase is going to come. I figure that for every 1% increase across the state in the number of nursing home patients will be somewhere in the order of $1 million general fund a year. So if you get 20 or 30% increase or 40%, you can figure your own thing. And you do see that kind of spread, Mr. Chairman, in other states, depending on whether there's excessive capacity in nursing homes or not. This one is one we have resisted any number of times, including we had an identical bill, except for the effective date, identical bill in the Labor Committee this year, which got defeated. So this is a rerun coming through from the House. Mr. Chairman, I warn you, my estimates are just estimates and only order of magnitude accurate, but the dynamics are pretty clear. If we pass this bill, we are going to hit our general fund significantly. And how it's going to work out exactly will depend on the skill of the health department bureaucracy. It may be that as the costs increase, they just come to the Appropriations Committee and say, we need a bigger budget in Medicaid, inflation and costs. And you don't need to be too specific as what caused the inflation cost. Is it the loss of the cost shift, which we will lose in the larger communities? Or is it expansion in the number of people going to nursing home because they've been marketing it, because the newer homes are more attractive, but they've been actively marketing it? And that's what's happened in other states, is as you had surplus capacity, it's been marketed. And you get a higher rate going into the nursing home, which is not good for anybody, not good for our general fund, not good for the seniors involved. Much better off trying to stay at home. As we have tried for years to get programs that will enable people to stay at home in their nursing homes. So that's the consequence of this bill. Exactly how large they are is speculative because we don't know how much of an increase it will engender in the use of nursing homes. But, Mr. Chairman, I think it's significant. So we have to look at this recognizing we are not looking at a free market at all. We are looking at a government-dominated market, Mr. Chairman, where people are induced to behave realizing they're not the ones that are paying. It's going to be the state of Wyoming and all the taxpayers. And if you want to vote for more tax increases, this is a good bill to vote for. You want to increase the medical welfare in this state, this is a good bill to vote for. If you want to preserve our finances so we don't have to raise taxes, this is a good bill to vote against, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion. Oh. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for the members of the body, certainly don't understand or know the details that the good senator just provided you, but I just want to give a little process information. So we did, your committee number 10 did consider a bill very similar to this with an effective 2025 date. So when you defeated that standing committee amendment, you defeated the bill that your Labor Health Committee defeated. The discussion after that committee meeting was that, well, maybe we should think about this for a year and actually do some work and come to some consensus, and that's why this bill before you now with the defeated standing committee amendment has a delayed effective date of 2026. Now, recognizing that, the issue is the same. It's repealing certificate of need. So Wyoming only has certificate of need for nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities. I actually believe that the entirety of the statute is not being implemented correctly, but that's different discussion for a different day. But so I just want to give a little process that this is something that your committee took up. When it came across from this bill came before us, it was assigned to Labor Health, but I felt because our committee had already seen it once, I felt it best to refer it to another committee, and that's why it came from another committee, just to give another fresh set of eyes at it. Came out of that committee, like I said, in the same form. You rejected that amendment, delayed it effective. If there's any questions about what the bill does, I think the good senator explained his concerns, but this does give us some running room of a year to maybe come up with a different approach or a different solution besides something like mileage as a factor for whether you can have this. Now, some of you are probably getting emails like we did as we were considering the bill. Certainly the concern you'll hear from the bill sponsor, the one presenting the bill, their community is very concerned and interested in this. The irony of the situation, I'll just point this out, is the institution that's there now is a private institution, and if this bill were to pass, the competition would be a governmental entity potentially. So I know we like to talk about free enterprise, but sometimes when the government is providing services, they're a part of that mix too, and I think we just got to bear that in mind as we consider these type of policy matters. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Barlow. Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spent much of my past year in a couple of these facilities on behalf of my brother, so I know a little bit about what's going on in some of those facilities. You know, I've been thinking a lot about this issue. We are the first or second fastest aging population in America, the state of Wyoming. We've got a lot of these folks coming. In my neighborhood, on the eastern part of Natrona County, you cannot get into one of these facilities. That concerns me a little bit. While I understand all of what the senator from Natrona County in front of me said to you, and that's been said forever, for a long, long time down here, we don't want to provide any competition to these facilities because we want to make sure they stay full. Well, in my neighborhood, they're full. So I'm interested in this bill, and I'm going to be listening carefully. We have a very quickly aging population in Wyoming. We're going to have to be able to take care of them. It feels like to me that this timing is pretty good for us to think about some additional facilities out across. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to, I'd like to explain what was said in committee. And we did have the Department of Health there, and they didn't have these concerns about basically putting our other businesses out of business. This came across during testimony that there's basically monopolies set up, and they control other businesses from coming in. And this would, in fact, open it up and have more people that would participate in this endeavor. So it would not be, it would give more beds available. And there was no testimony to the fact that it was going to, in fact, cause a large price increase or the collapse of other people currently supplying a service. And it may be more regional, but certainly there are areas in the state of Wyoming that are hindered by this rule. And this was an attempt to open it up to allow more people to participate in providing this service. So as I look forward maybe to this getting through committee of the whole, we get more answers on second reading and third reading, certainly, to have a more clear understanding of the ramifications that have been brought up as concerns. But on and for the bill in committee of the whole. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Culp. Senator Braden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Definitely on and for this bill. The good senator in the back of the room talked about how our population, the age of it, is increasing. And I don't know if you've ever talked to someone or worked with somebody who's been at home, they've been independent, and then they get sick to the point that they're not independent. And having those conversations with them, there are few, if any, people who are like, yay, I want to go to the nursing home. It doesn't happen because we value our freedoms in our homes. So I think this idea that we're going to have an increase in the people that are going to go to the nursing homes just because we have maybe more available, that's just not going to happen, Mr. Chairman. People go to the nursing homes when they can't be taken care of. And there are communities where our facilities are full to capacity and you have to wait for beds sometimes. And then sometimes there's ones that aren't. But it's okay for us to have some competition in all areas of services that are provided. And this is a service that's provided, and this isn't gonna hurt our budget. This isn't gonna hurt our communities. All this could possibly do is help all of that. So on and for this bill.
Thank you. Senator Barlow. Get you a mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So probably should have had a little more discussion about what we're actually repealing here, what the bill actually does, because this bill is just a repealer bill, right? And so you don't actually see what's in the bill. So to the concern that all the facilities in my community are full, or at least the ones that are there, well, if there's above 85% capacity, that they're at 85% or greater, then this certificate of need is moot. You can build as much as you want, and it's within 30 miles. So it's all the facilities within 30 miles. So if a community in this state and they don't have any bed capacity, then this doesn't apply to them. They have 85% or lower, then it applies. So I think we should be clear about what we're talking about. The second thing, and the good senator who spoke first talked about the budget. 70%, and actually I just got a new report from the department that oversees this, our Medicaid program, but I'm just going to use rough numbers. 70%, I'll say it again, 70% of the beds in the state of Wyoming are paid for by our Medicaid program. Now, your community may be a little higher or lower, or that particular facility may be a little higher or lower, but let's just use that average. So if we're at 70%, and the hospital is at 80% capacity, adding more beds to the system for quality or whatever, with no more people needing beds, potentially, then you have to distribute that same 70% over more beds. And then you get into an issue where you do have challenges, and then what happens? The same thing that happened about 8 years ago. Facilities get in trouble, and they come to the legislature and say, hey, we need to backfill. We did it for critical access hospitals 8 years ago, because we had hospitals in dire straits. So I think this won't cost anymore. Maybe not until we start saying, this facility is gonna go under, and then our compassion kicks in, and that compassion strikes our checkbook, and then we start writing checks as the state of Wyoming, saying we need to improve reimbursement rates for these facilities, or we just need to give them a cash infusion, cash flow, et cetera. So I think that let's understand what we're doing here. I appreciate competition. I want the best services. I don't want people to feel they need to be in a nursing home. We're doing everything we can to keep them out of the nursing home with home-based services. But let's be cautious about, let's think about what we might be creating a bigger system with the same finite dollars that then we're asked to come in and prop up later when our hearts get tugged on because our elders are being maybe put at a place where their facility may be closed down, or they may be at financial risk. Quality of care goes down because there's only so many financial resources, because I'll go back to it again. 70% of the nursing home beds in the state of Wyoming are paid for by the state of Wyoming with assistance from the federal government. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, and the mechanics by where we get in trouble, I think we'll start out with the development of some new nursing homes that will not accept Medicaid. Because if you don't accept Medicaid, you don't pay that big hidden cost shift tax. And the larger communities, you can probably do that and make it work. And Mr. Chairman, that will then threaten the other facilities in the communities. And we will have to raise the Medicaid reimbursement rate so that those facilities don't go under. Because if they go under, then we'll have a whole bunch of people, Mr. Chairman, we don't have space to put them in. Either we'll raise the rates, the department will, and then they'll come to the appropriations committee and say, oh, by the way, the costs have gone up, so we need a bigger appropriation. That's how Medicaid, I think, often works. If they're not skillful, we could have a sudden closure, and that would be disastrous. I would hope they'd be able to avoid that. But that would be the dynamic, and then the rates get raised, and then new construction can be built elsewhere, and yes, people won't want to go, but they'll get put there, Mr. Chairman, and the experience and my information on this is probably a dozen years old now. We looked at, a group I was with, looked at what was going on around the country with the actual rates of people having to go to nursing homes. And the percentage of the elderly population over 80 that might be most of those people, Mr. Chairman, depended very much on the amount of facilities that were present. There was clear evidence that where there were lots of facilities, they were succeeding in marketing and selling maybe not the individuals, but their caretakers, and getting larger nursing home populations. We fared relatively well in that study. We weren't as good as Oregon and Washington, have been pretty creative and alternative facilities for home health care, for care instead of nursing homes. But we were not nearly as bad as states like Iowa that had way overbuilt and had a much higher rate of people going to nursing homes. So I will take exception to the argument that it won't grow. It will grow. And it will come back. And I probably won't be here to vote for the necessary tax increase. I'll be around to pay for it, but I won't be here to vote for it. But that's what's going to happen if we go down this road. And Mr. Chairman, this is a bill that would make a lot of sense if this was a free market, but it's not. It's a government market where the government pays.
Further discussion? Senator Crum, sorry I missed you earlier.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heard a lot of reasons why not. We heard some from some great senators why, but let's just look at the basics of this bill. Why is it not a free market? Because we make it not a free market. We've got the certificate of need in there. Let's open it up. We've taken certificate of need off of hospitals. We've taken them off of all kinds of different healthcare things, and we're okay. Certificate of need, we talk about, well, there's 60, I've heard from 64%, I heard 70%, it's somewhere in there on the Medicaid patients. If 64 or 70% of your market is paying with Medicaid, you have to take those patients or you can't stay open. And ask yourself, what healthcare facility can you go in today and you walk in and they say, you can't come because you don't have enough money? Can you do that at your hospital? Can you do it at your current nursing home? You've got to be taken care of. And so the argument that they're going to restrict people from coming in just doesn't, if you just ask yourself, does this make sense? It doesn't make sense. It's the fear mongering that's out there to keep monopolies in place is what we're hearing about, not about what good comes out of it. Isn't it good? We hear new nursing homes are going to cause the old ones to either suffer or improve or get better. Wouldn't it be great to have a new, nice nursing home, whether it was your existing one remodeled because of the fear of competition, or have a new one come into your community where you have a nice place to go as a senior or to visit a relative? Wouldn't that be nice versus having an old rundown facility that's a monopoly's protecting that doesn't allow people in there? Wouldn't it, we hear about going under. Nursing homes and businesses go under all the time. There was a nursing home not too long ago go under in the Upper Platte Valley. We have certificate of need. It didn't protect that nursing home. Having not a certificate of need is not going to protect it either. The market's going to protect it. If they do a good job, people will come. If they don't do a good job, people will leave and go to the nice new nursing home. Isn't that the way the market should be? Changing the law is going to improve quality. And improve quality and more beds. Think about you're going to college, for those of us that have the fortune to go there, and you go to Economics 101, you go supply and demand. If you get too much supply, what happens to price? What happens to price if you get too much demand? Price goes down. It doesn't go up. The Economics 101 tells you the price goes down if you have too many beds. Who's that good for? That's good for the consumer. How many people are going to south of the border to our friends in the Green State to get long-term health care and not staying in state because of the quality's not there? This is going to keep people in the state. It's going to drive more people here versus letting people leave. So the argument that, well, we aren't going to have enough, it's going to cost more money. Look, healthcare is going to cost more money tomorrow than it costs today. We all know that. Will this affect cost more? It may drive it down because we have competition. So again, Mr. Chairman, I highly would recommend support of this bill to improve healthcare and long-term care facilities for our seniors in the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Olson's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 289, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. All those in favor, please rise. Nineteen ayes. House Bill 289 has passed committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senator Grew.
Privilege of the floor, Mr. Chairman.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good members of the 68th, tell you a quick story. Back in the early 80s, lived in an apartment in Jackson, working 3 jobs like everybody else. Got a roommate who moved in, friend of a friend, and that friend turned into a lifelong friend. Friend who's been my campaign treasurer, every campaign I ever ran. He's an accountant. He's retired now. His wife served with distinction in Teton County School District. He's from the Commonwealth of the Keystone State. She's a daughter of Delaware. I'd like to introduce 2 of my best friends in the world, Mark and Jane LeJohn, right here. Welcome to the Senate. Thank you, Mr. President.
The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 242. Will the reading clerk read in the bill?
House Bill 242, Manufacturers and Dealers of New Trailers Changes, an act relating to motor vehicles, sponsored by Representative Tarver, was referred to Committee Number 8, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Senators Anderson, Cooper, Coleman, Pappas, excuse Senator Brennan, Senator Pappas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with the due pass recommendation on House Bill 242, Manufacturers and Dealers of New Trailers Changes. And since the co-sponsor of the bill has bailed on us today, I will take a stab at it and keep it right here. So, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is a fairly simple bill exempting motor vehicle dealers and manufacturers who sell trailers from specific provisions that have been burdening the industry. It looks specifically at Chapter 16 motor vehicle statutes, where all the rules and regulations for vehicle manufacturers and dealers reside. And but what we forget is that trailers are also included in this section, and there's some burden that has been placed on them that are really not necessary. So, so while we have chosen to regulate the motor vehicles through franchises, that's basically how it's done. A lot of the trailers industry is not through franchise agreements. So what we're doing with this piece of legislation is trying to make it, take that burden off of manufacturers who manufacture new trailers, but are being sold by dealers who typically usually have franchise agreements for their other types of vehicles. So just walking you quickly through the bill, if you go on page 2, there's a new paragraph that basically sets a definition for sales authorization. So it just basically means a document from a manufacturer or distributor of trailers that does not contract through an enfranchisement authorizing a dealer to engage in business. So basically, it's a letter stating that we're not in an enfranchisement agreement. And so that sales authorization will be the document between that will get them out of the regulatory burden that our current statutes have. And then on the bottom half of that page, 3116-103 licenses, basically this is the license application requirements are laid out in this section. We're adding a new Romanet 9 that says for new vehicle dealer license to sell trailers as defined by that statute shown, if the sales agreement does not involve an enfranchisement, a sales authorization from the manufacturer or dealer stating that the dealer is authorized to sell any specific make or model of trailer other than house trailers or commercial vehicles. House trailers and commercial vehicles are not here. We're talking about small trailers. Okay? And then we're also adding a new paragraph G under the applicability of provisions that also states that that apply to dealers and manufacturers of new trailers other than house trailers and commercial vehicles. So the provisions, some of these provisions are basically unlawful, under the unlawful act statutes and under our civil statutes. So this new paragraph had to be included there as well. Pretty simple bill. So since their sales agreement don't include franchising fees or branding requirements, we're just taking that regulatory burden off of them. All the manufacturer will do is have to provide a letter, and this is actually supported by the industry, by YDOT, and didn't hear any opposition to this at all. It's a win-win kind of for everybody. So I hope if there's any questions, I hope I can answer them. Our good co-sponsor is not here today, but I'd be glad to try to answer questions.
Any questions? Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Paps's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 242, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 221. Will the reading clerk read in the bill?
House Bill 221 engrossed Bighorn and domestic sheep relocation, effective date repeal, an act relating to wildlife and livestock, sponsored by Representative Ottman, was referred to Committee Number 5, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Crago, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pearson. Senator French, Chairman.
Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 221 do pass. And for an explanation, I call on the good senator from the land of farms and mountains, me.
Senator French.
So there's a couple amendments to this. I'll go through the bill first, and then if we could have those ready, and after I go through the bill. This is very simple, as you can see. All it does is change the date from January 1st to 2026 to January 1st to 2028. During committee, there was good discussion on this. There was, I think the main focus was there was a fear that if there wasn't an extension to get full clarity on what the feds might do, are they going to change the Lander RMP? They were concerned about protecting their grazing rights, those ranchers. There was also testimony from one of our good senators who will address the Second Amendment on this bill. He'll explain where he was at on this. So all it does is change the date. It's not a big deal here, but we'll have a good discussion, I'm sure, as soon as that Second Amendment is ready. And so if I could have those amendments ready in, please.
House Bill 221, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to engross copy, page 1 above line 1 in.
I move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 221. All this was the our attorneys, the LSO, caught this, and all they wanted was to delete repeal. That's all it does. So I would encourage an aye vote on that.
Question?
All those in favor of Senator French's motion to adopt the standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 221, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes. Senator French.
Next is Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 221, and Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, did I have that amendment already?
House Bill 221, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to engross copy, page 1, line 12, after.
Senator Hicks.
So, Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'm going to withdraw Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 221, but I would like to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Absent, yeah, there we go.
So,
What's that on
Mr. Chairman,
here?
I believe that's my part.
Yeah. Okay. Absent objection, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 has been withdrawn. There we go. Back on the bill. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. President, on a bill, and this is a bill that we passed out of here last year with, I'll just tell you, it was a 30-to-1 vote, and it went down to the other side. And in that bill, and let me describe a little bit what the bill does, is the bill is designed to provide all the protections that we can for those livestock producers in an area in central Wyoming that is a proposed area for reintroduction of bighorn sheep. There was a lot of concerns with the livestock producers up there associated with actions of the federal government and some rules that they have. So the entire bill was designed to provide protections. The major protection in there is if there was any adverse actions, even notices to promulgate rules or actions in the Federal Register, that the Game and Fish Department would be responsible for removing any bighorn sheep that were actually introduced into that area. It also provided for the Attorney General to defend those actions, to defend those livestock producers up there. So that's the gist of the bill that passed out of here. It went down to the House. They put an amendment on there that said this bill can't be enacted until which times the federal government takes an action. And basically, they deferred the entire bill to the point in time that the federal government takes an action to repeal this provision in federal regulations for the Bureau of Land Management. And so we went to conference committee. And we listened to our colleagues down there. They had a 30-month, they put it out to 2028, or 2026, July 1st of 2026. We had an effective immediately. We compromised significantly with our House colleagues, and we moved that out 30 months. And we said, okay, we understand the need to compromise. We'll even go a little bit further your direction. So we'll go out to now January 1st of 2026 instead of July 1st of 2026. So we moved substantially. And so we came back, we did concurrence. I thought we were good with it, but it just seems that there's a very small number of folks that are still uncomfortable with the idea that at some point in time in the future, the state of Wyoming may want to introduce bighorn sheep back in there. So now it's, oh, let's kick this can down the road another 2 years. Let's just shove this off and let the feds decide whether we're going to be able to manage our wildlife in the state of Wyoming, or we're just going to wait for the federal government to come back and change their rules. And so, members of the body, this is a situation where it's kind of, I'm going to ask you to defend the position of the Senate. We passed this out of there, and I understand as well as anybody in this body is not obligated by the decisions that the last legislature made. This is less than 1 year later. We're back down here, and this body, at a supermajority, said it's the right policy. We moved that effective date out. we met with our colleagues, we said we significantly understand the issue, and we need to move your direction, and we did that, and that's not good enough. We're back 12 months later saying, no, let's move the goalposts again. And members of the body, I would almost guarantee you, if we move this goalpost, and the federal government doesn't change their rules in 2 years, we'll be moving the goalpost again, and again, and again, and it's bad public policy to continue to move goalposts and say, let's wait for the federal government to decide when we've afforded all of those protections that we possibly can put from the state of Wyoming, to the point unprecedented that if the federal government, or anybody for that matter, any third party wanted to pursue legal action against the federal government, this state would remove those bighorn sheep. That's unprecedented. We should honor the position of the Senate. We shouldn't continue to allow the other house to continue to move goalposts on you. So I would ask you to vote no on House Bill 221.
Further discussion? Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am in favor of this bill, actually. I was in part of the discussions with a lot of the landowners over in this area. And back when we were talking about this last year, I testified in that committee that I don't trust the federal government, and I don't trust what they're doing with these animals. And I think that we know what has happened to our state and a lot of ag producers in the state with the introduction of the wolves by the federal government. And I want to remind you that there have been several states surrounding us where bighorn sheep were introduced or were currently existing, and leaseholders, mostly sheep, most of the sheep leases, lost a lot of their leases because of the bighorn sheep, because they wanted to claim that the domestic sheep were causing disease in the bighorns. Last year when they were talking about introducing these bighorns up there, I was very much against it because I've seen what the bighorns have done to sheep producers across this country. I like that we have a bill in place to protect Wyoming and to remove those animals. But I'm not exactly trusting that state law with a federal animal is going to help. So that was the reason and the discussion for extending the state. We have our game and fish, we have our livestock producers, we have wool growers, stock growers, all working on this with the current administration to make sure that things are in place so that our ranchers are protected. That was the reason for extending the date. I'm in support of this bill, extending the date a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'd just say vote your conscience. You know, is a 2-year extension the end of the world, or is it a good thing to get a few more answers? You know, because we all want more sheep. Our county up there is blessed with just driving out of Cody and seeing sheep that come right up to your car in the wintertime. So we all want more sheep, but we also want to protect our ranchers. So is a 2-year extension the end of the world? Vote your conscience.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you,
Majority Floor Leader.
I'm Senator Nethercott on the floor. Mr. Chairman, thank you. On and against the bill. Senators, we just did this earlier this morning, where we pass a bill 9 months prior. It's the Senate's position, it's a Senate bill, we do really good work, we go through compromise with the other chamber, and then here comes another bill fixing that again 9 months later. And we really have to self-regulate, I think, in a different and new way. Good policy was set by the senator from Bags with that bill, who cares deeply about wildlife, who worked heavily on this issue. We have to hold true to the Senate position, let this work. Our ag producers and ranch producers are always well protected in this state. I think they come first in all things at all times. This is a nice compromise, recognizing Wyoming's wildlife as well, and a good compromise was reached. I urge your no vote on this bill and stand by the Senate position.
Further discussion? You ready for the question? Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, to just address a couple of questions from my colleague from the southwest corner of the state. What's fundamentally different about Wyoming and why this has happened to other states and it hasn't happened to Wyoming, just a little history lesson. So back in the late 90s, there was a federal decision called the Payette decision, and it basically said you got to remove all domestic sheep grazing off the Payette National Forest in Idaho. Landmark decision. That happened. At that point in time, the late 90s, this whole conflict between domestic sheep and bighorn sheep was coming to a head, and at your time, your senior senator, U.S. Senator Craig Thomas, and Governor Jim Geringer were getting lobbied by both sides, the wildlife interest, the livestock interest, and they said, we do things different in Wyoming. We will work this issue out within Wyoming, and we will come up with a plan. And so they formed a working committee, and they spent 4 years trying to hammer out a reasonable compromise and a plan that worked for everybody in the state of Wyoming. In 2004, they put that plan together, all of those interests that was just talked about, both the wildlife and the livestock interests come together, and they said that was a plan. That plan is held up. In the federal court in the early 2000s, there was a lawsuit against the Medicine Bow National Forest. And at that point in time, and it was to remove domestic sheep because we had a bighorn sheep population. Our state agencies, the Game and Fish Department and the Department of Ag, wrote a letter saying our plan is sound. We asked the courts and a judgment for the agency to overturn that decision. That was overturned, because we worked in partnership and because we had a plan. In 2008, 2009, same thing comes along. Bridger Teton Forest is redoing their plan. Same outcome. We had a coalition predicated on Wyoming's plan that no other state in the nation has. In 2015, this body codified that into law. We're the only state in the United States of America that has a domestic bighorn sheep plan. In that plan, it specifically calls out this area as a cooperative review area. This bill memorializes all of that hard work to protect those livestock interests, to allow the state to move forward to manage our wildlife population. We have said we are going to work. This same group has spent the entire last year since we passed this legislation out, developing legislation to take to our congressional delegation. That's happening today. It's wrong to move the goalpost. We have done so much in this state to address this issue. We've been, as a state, and we've been united, and we've been together with the plan and moving forward. The wildlife interests are advocating for the changes in the federal rules alongside of our livestock partnership. This is moving the goalpost. It doesn't mean those sheep are going to come in any sooner. It just says, look, we're stronger when we work together. This is not working together. This is moving the goalpost on and against the bill.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you. I don't pretend to know as much as my preceding speaker about wildlife. I commend him for that. I hope to someday, because that's a lot of what our state stands for. But I know the one thing I always do as a traditional rule is I come down on the side of the ag community. That's just where I'm at. So this is probably where I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to stay with my ag folks, but maybe a word from the chairman that, what was the testimony from the ag community? What were they saying? They're concerned about this, but ultimately, that's who I'm going to come down on the side of.
Thank you. Senator Pearson.
Chairman, so yes, in committee, there were a few ag people there, and they are in favor of this bill. So we can talk about that this was a cooperative review area, but were all of the stakeholders at the meeting? The answer is no, they weren't. And a lot of those ranchers up there want this extension. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, in the committee, there was testimony, the Farm Bureau supported the 2-year extension. The Wyoming Wool Growers supported the 2-year extension. I think the main concern from the folks from one of the ranchers that testified was they just want to make darn sure that everything's in place. And they want this 2-year extension to make sure they feel that the environment's good back there with the change of administration, to make sure everything's in place, so that any concerns they have on their ranching operations or leases are talked to or dealt with. So there was some anxiety amongst them, but there was a lot of support from the ag groups saying, the 2-year extension, let's do this. So anyway.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you. That's what I needed to hear. Heard the ag community would like to have this extension. That's a fair request. Gives us a little more time. I'm gonna come down on the side of my ag community in Wyoming, and I'll be for the bill.
Thank you. Senator Nethercott.
On and against the bill. Who is ever against the ag or ranch community in this state? Ever. I think we do a great deal for our ag and ranch community. And you know that to be true. You know it. You know it. This is good Senate policy that you passed 9 months ago. So the fact that they're asking for more shouldn't surprise you. They'll always come back and ask for more. There's never enough. It always comes first. It always comes first. But now you're being asked to hold with the Senate position, a position you held 9 months ago. We can't hold that long. We can't make it 12 months. We can't make it a year. We can't hold with that position. This is bad policy to continue to come back and rework these Senate bills. 9 months every time. We'll never get through any issue, and they will never stop asking for more. Hold the line, hold the Senate position, vote no on the bill. Our good senator from Baggs, leading these issues for our state, has done really good work for the people of Wyoming, who represents more ranchers and ag producers probably than most of us combined. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Question's been called. Yep. Senator Hicks.
You know, Mr. Chairman, and I think most of you know, I've spent my entire career working in agriculture. I've got a little ranch of my own. I've also spent my entire career working on federal land management issues, trying to carve out win-win situations. Because when both win, Wyoming wins. This is not how Wyoming wins, on and against the bill.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heard loud and clear. Ag community's asking for it. Yes, we do stand with them, asking for you to stand with them once again with this bill, on and for the bill.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I know organized agriculture is for the bill, but ag is not unified. I urge you to vote no on the bill.
Anyone else? Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator French's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 221, say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. What's that? Oh, we have to do a standing vote, yeah. Pursuant to SR 65, having failed a standing division vote, a roll. All those in favor stand. Thank you. Do I get a stand? All those that are a no, stand? So we've got to do a division vote now. Yeah. No's 18. So if I'm doing this right, pursuant to SR 6-5, having failed a standing standing division vote, a roll call vote is required. The chief clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 221, Committee of the Whole roll call. Anderson? No. No. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? No. No. Case? No. No. Cooper? Grego? Aye. Aye. Crum? No. No. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Guru? Hicks? No. No. Hutchings? No. Ide?
Aye.
Aye. Jones? No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Olson? No. Pappas? No. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Biden? No. Cooper? Excused. Guru? No. No. Beitman, no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 221, 11 aye, 19 no, 1 excused.
Pursuant to SR 6-5, having failed a standing division vote, a roll call. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up here. Yeah. House Bill 221, having failed a roll call vote pursuant to SR 6-5A, is deemed indefinitely postponed. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 72. Will the reading clerk please read in the House bill?
House Bill 72 engrossed, Protecting Women's Privacy in Public Spaces Act, an act relating to the administration of government sponsored by Representative Lawley, was referred to Committee Number 1, which turned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended by Senators Grego, Crum, Hicks, Kolb, and Olson. Senator Olson, chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Olson.
I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 72 do pass. There's a standing committee amendment, and I would ask that to be read in.
House Bill 72, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 2, line 18 after.
I will move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 72 and ask for your favorable consideration. Senators, this amendment is a technical correction that was brought forward to us by the good attorneys in LSO. So I would ask that you vote yes. And I'll take any questions.
Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator, all those in favor of Senator Olson's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 72, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment's passed. Back on the bill. Senator Crago.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We can go straight to the question if that's what everybody wants to do. So, Mr. Chairman, today I bring you House Bill 72, Protecting Women's Privacy in Public Spaces Act. I think the sponsor of the bill told us in committee, and I had the same experience. When we were knocking on doors this summer, we heard quite a few complaints about this particular issue, and the issue is, what are we gonna do about boys going into girls' bathrooms? What are we gonna do about that issue when we're talking about public spaces, whether it be at schools, whether it be at your local rec center, or as this bill also addresses, our detention centers and our jails. And so this bill is an attempt to solve that problem. There's been a lot of thought that went into the bill, and it really addresses 3 different places. One's public facilities, second's educational facilities, and the last is jails, Mr. Chairman. And so just I'm gonna walk you through the bill, and then we'll stand for questions at the end. Turning into the the meat of the bill on page 2, we go through the definitions, what a changing area is, correctional facility, educational facility, which is really all of our schools. It includes the university, community colleges, all your public schools, and any property that's owned or leased by them. The correctional facility, there's a definition that's within statute and encompasses all of those. We then talk about, there are 2 definitions in here that are important, everybody should look. One is on page 3, it defines female, and the counter to that is on page 4, and it defines male. And you can read the definitions for yourself. Local government, and we had quite a bit of discussion about this in committee and whether or not this bill should ultimately apply to our local governments. I think as this bill moves forward, we can have that discussion, but currently it does. Moving down, there's a definition for public facility. And we're gonna have to fix this. We had some testimony from the folks that manage all of our state property. And one of the questions they said is that they brought to us, well, does this apply to the homes that are owned by the state? And obviously it's not intended to, so we'll have to carve that out if we're able to move the bill forward. And there's lots of homes, whether it's the place where our chief executive lives, or whether it's homes owned by the department that manages our wildlife, or whether it's teacherages owned by some of our local school districts. Those should all be exempt, and we'll have to work on that. Currently, they are not exempt in the bill, and we'll work on that as it moves forward. Going down, more definitions, and then we get in the middle of page 5 there, we get to the first facility that I talked about, which is public facilities. And when I'm reading this, it would apply to all local governmental entities and their facilities, but I'm really thinking, for example, like rec centers. And that's, we're talking about changing rooms, shower rooms, et cetera. And that's what this is applying to. And if you see there, it says in each public facility, every multi-occupancy changing area, restroom, and sleeping quarters shall be designated for use exclusively by males or exclusively by females, one or the other. Moving on, it talks about sleeping areas as well, only for one sex or the other, and it can't be used for both. And then on page 6 there on paragraph B, talks about no person shall enter a changing area, restroom, or sleeping quarters that is designated for males or females unless the person is a member of that sex. And that's really the prohibition for the individual. Moving down through that, next paragraph is reasonable accommodations, that the owners of these facilities can provide reasonable accommodations. Paragraph D is all the exceptions, and there's lots of those. Happy to talk about those if we want to get into them, but they're similar throughout the different facilities. Single occupancies, for example, those are exempt. If it's a single occupancy restroom changing area, it's not subject to the law. And then the next page talks about specific people, so employees, right? So if you have someone cleaning a restroom, they don't have to be of that sex as long as it's not occupied. Someone wants to enter to give care to an individual, that's covered. That was one of the questions I think that came up in the other chamber. Moving down, if you're doing it as part of your job, that's also exempt. Natural disasters or to provide emergency care. That's another exception or exemption from the statute. And then the other one that came up was temporarily designated. So bottom of page 7, for example, locker rooms, right? You're having a basketball tournament at a facility and they take the boys' locker room and turn it into a girls' locker room for that particular day because it's a girls' basketball tournament. That would be exempt, and that's at the bottom of page 7. Moving on down through page 8, this is the remedies section, starting on the top of page 8, all the way down through the top of page 9. That's the remedy section, and you can look through and see how that works. What remedies are available to you if you are aggrieved by this particular, a violation of this particular law. Then we move into the education facility, and I won't go through that because it's essentially the same as the previous or the governmental entity facility. It's almost exactly the same, except there is a provision as you move towards the end of that talks about sleeping quarters if you're on a school trip. And so that's a little bit different, has the same tenor to it, but there is some additional parts put in there for sleeping quarters if you're on school trips, and that's on page 14. Bottom of page 14, again, remedies for the educational facilities. And then I mentioned jails, and that's on page 15. And this is an issue that has also come up across the country. And so we're just trying to get ahead of that and make sure that we don't have this issue. I think there's actually testimony, and we didn't get to that necessarily in our committee because we ran out of time, but I think it's also been an issue here in Wyoming on whether or not we're going to have divided, essentially divisions within our jails and facilities. I do have an amendment, if this makes it further, to clean up some of this language and actually simplify this language regarding jails, and I'm happy to bring that if we get any further, but it's gonna require a little bit of work, but I think we can clean that up. Moving to the end of the bill, page 19, that's the immunity language that we've talked about in other bills, and so that's the bill, Mr. Chairman. Happy to answer any questions that the body may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any discussion? Call for the question. Oh. Senator Nethercott.
On and against the bill, where I appreciated a 20-minute explanation on a 20-page bill to protect me and my privacy in public spaces. You know, I think we've had a bill that addresses this issue really well, that was tightly drafted, again by another good senator that's worked on this issue as a result of a request from his community. The Senate has worked that bill. It is appropriately directed. I know we're hearing that there's a need to continue to further amend this bill, which is surprising when it's already crossed over and significant work is still needed at this place in the game. There's significant concerns that I know I have with it. I mean, one is related to correctional facilities and jails. This is not a new concept for those facilities to be dealing with. When you're dealing with people housed in close quarters for an extensive period of time that come from all walks of life, these challenges they're used to dealing with, there's significant federal law associated with how to handle this. This further complicates that for them in a way that's really untenable. I appreciate that they're seeing it in the jails, but they have for 100 years, if not longer. And so that's not a new issue for them, that all of a sudden they don't have the tools in the toolbox to manage their inmate populations. They already do. Federal law affords that. So I think this particular bill is too unwieldy at this point, with significant amendments that still need to come. And this chamber passed out a really good bill providing those protections for our private spaces and for our bathrooms and for children. And I really support the Senate position, so I'm against this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the other bill was only K through 12 and it did not cover University of Wyoming. I have a real life scenario that our ladies over at UW have to put up with every day. You're at Half Acre Gym, you're in the locker room changing your clothes, and there is a naked male in the locker room with you. This is a scenario that's brought to me by someone who has just graduated. This is going on. Is this fair to subject our females to this? I don't think it is. So I realize I think both of these bills are important, but this one is different because it does cover the university. I don't think it's right that the females should have to look at a naked male when they're there to work out or go to PE classes or whatever it is. It's not right, and that's why we do need this bill.
Thank you. Anyone else? Senator Landon.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I gotta be honest, I'm a little bit mind numbed on this one. 20 pages of whatever, there's a paragraph at the top of page 8, which indicates that a person who, while accessing a changing area, person of an opposite sex is in there. You know, I helped to run our state tournaments for years, Mr. Chairman, and once in a while you'd have a situation where a team was leaving, somebody goes back in, meanwhile another team comes, and it happens to be a girls' team after a boys' team. Man, I tell you what, that gives me trouble. The other thing that gives me trouble, I don't know if this is a national model piece of legislation or what, but the verbiage in this bill related to correctional institutions, I don't understand all that's written about that. What are we talking about opposite sex being in bathrooms together in correctional facilities? As a former chairman of the Judiciary Committee, I've never been made aware of or ever had a complaint anywhere in the neighborhood of something like that. So yeah, I think this bill needs a lot of work. This is a lot of verbiage about something that, quite honestly, 31 years in a higher educational institution, I might have run into something once on this front. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Times have changed. Thank you.
Senator Crum.
Mr. Chairman, well, I appreciate this bill. You know, when you compare what we had earlier to this, the other one is understandable, it's clean. This one is certainly broader, and maybe there's a scope for that, but there's a lot of changes, including with the title. The title is Protecting Women's Privacy in Spaces. Well, we're all for that. I'm for that. I'm gonna raise my hand. I'm all for that. But this bill is broader than that. This is about protecting everyone's privacy, not just women, men as well. I can tell you here at the Granddaddy of it all, I was down here last summer, and in walked 4 females right into the men's room. I can tell you at a large event over the hill, here they come at a halftime, right into the men's room. This is a bill to protect all. So it starts with the titles even incorrect. Well, we want to protect women. We want to protect men too. There's just a lot of work to be done on this particular bill. And we have one that's in pretty good shape. If it needs expanded, next year's only 11 months away, we can deal with it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I hate to belabor the point, and I don't want to take away the seriousness of the issue, but we are all just laughing about a practice that you've all experienced, that you've known, that your wives, that your daughters have done. The women's restroom there's a line. And every single one of the women in your lives has walked into that male restroom and used it. That is now a private cause of action, probably a felony somewhere in the bill, and governmental immunity is waived, and we're gonna sue that entity for failing to stop your daughter from going into the men's restroom when she had to go and the line was too long. Are we overreacting, perhaps? Is the bill too unwieldy, perhaps? It's not that the effort is bad. It's not that we don't want to protect the poor girls at UW in the locker room. We do. I look forward to resolving that issue and learning more about their harms. But this bill that we're turning into a law, this isn't theoretical. This isn't, I don't like men in women's restrooms, therefore I vote aye. We are turning this into a law that's 20 pages long that allows for that cause of action for a crime that you have committed. I just want a little bit of common sense here, and I urge that for maybe how far we're going with this. The Senate has passed out a really good bill. We can support that. That does protect our children. That does protect those private spaces without going a little too far based on some of these anecdotal stories and recognizing the reality that we all face in real life here in Wyoming.
Ready for the question? No. Senator Dockstader.
Mr. Chairman, we're being too quick to dismiss this. This is a problem. Yeah, it's a serious problem. Families across the state, this has them concerned. It keeps coming up. Yes, we do have a good piece of legislation that's come out. But to suddenly dismiss this, that's not right. The topic is too serious. I see some good legal minds on here that can help us. If it's got problems, it can help us sort it out. Let's not dismiss this. This is a serious topic. Let's move it through the process and let's take care of the problem.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, point of order, we're not supposed to be talking about other bills when we're discussing one bill. Second of all, I'm a grandma and this is a very serious issue. I have a 10-year-old granddaughter that deserves to be protected in public spaces, not just K-12 schools. And we do things all the time where we reconcile bills at the end. That's fine. We need to give the good committee who worked this bill a little more time to come up with a couple more amendments that make us feel a little more comfortable. But this is a good bill. It deserves to move forward. If we're still not comfortable on third reading, then we can vote no then. But let's not do this to the people that deserve protection. My grandkids, my grandson, my granddaughter, other people, not just in school, but in public spaces. I remember when we were over at the building down the hill, when we were displaced from the Capitol, we had young people coming in our bathrooms and thinking it was funny. Well, you know, it's not so funny when a giant male comes in your bathroom and you sent your granddaughter in there thinking she was safe. So I'm on and for this bill, and I would encourage us to treat it with the deference that it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure I understand the sideboards on this. At Don's Supermarket, I have men and women's rooms. That's a private place, right? Because I've actually used the women's room and I want to make sure I'm not committing a felony. Thank you.
Anyone else? Is there a question? Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Olson's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 72, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Division's been called. All those in favor, please rise. Count me. Got me. What was it? Okay. 13 ayes. All those opposed, please rise. Yeah. House Bill 13. House Bill 72 has failed to pass committee of the whole. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Thank you. Pursuant to SR 6-5, having failed a standing division vote, a roll call vote is required. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Committee of the Whole, roll call vote, House Bill 72. Anderson? No. No. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Aye. Case? No. Cooper excused. Crago? Aye. Aye. Crum? No. No. Dockstader? Aye. Aye. Driscoll? No. French? No. No. Guru? No. No. Hicks? No. No. Hutchings? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Olson? Aye. Pappas? No. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman? Aye. Closing vote. Salazar, no to aye. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 72, 16 aye, 14 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 72 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 189. Will the reading clerk please read in the House bill?
House Bill 189 engrossed, harmful communication, minors, an act relating to crimes and offenses, sponsored by Representative Lean, was referred to committee number 1, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Crago, Crum, Hicks, Kolb, and Olson. Senator Olson, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Olson.
I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 189 do pass. And there is a standing committee amendment. I'd ask that that be read in.
House Bill 189, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 4, line 8, after.
I will move standing committee amendment number 1 to House Bill 189 and ask for your favorable consideration. I will turn over the explanation of the bill along with the explanation of the amendment to the good senator from Laramie County, Senator Hutchings.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Chairman Olson. Thank you, Chairman Ide. This bill is about lions, tigers, and wolves, predatory animals. I remember in the 1960s, an insurance company featured a show called Wild Kingdom on TV. We sat around on Sunday evening to watch the lions and tigers stalk and prey upon other animals, those weaker than themselves. We were always grateful as kids we did not live in a jungle and have to deal with the wild animals. Now we're going to advance 60 years. Times have changed. Today, the lions, the tigers, and the wolves are mankind, preying upon the weakest and most innocent of us, our children. The jungle is in your living rooms, bedrooms, on your kids' laptops and phones. From what I have been told, we had a situation where a man from one of the counties here in Wyoming was involved in a sting operation. He had 3 binders of online chats with what he thought was a 13-year-old girl. We don't know if those binders were ½ an inch, or 2 inches wide, and thank God, it was a Colorado investigator posing as a child. Sadly, those binders of sexually charged conversations were not illegal. He was, however, arrested for child pornography on his phone. Because of this lack in our laws, we are bringing to you House Bill 189, Harmful Communication to Minors. This bill seeks to address this issue, the hunter preying on his victim. There are statutes that come close to what we're dealing with here. You may find a statute here on this and here on that, but what we're trying to do here is take this whole issue of harmful communication and put it in one statute, a new one, 62321, which will deal with a prohibition of adults from communicating with minors about sexual activities as specified. In our communities, we are seeing the fallout of not stopping this first step when known to sexual abuse of a minor. The passage of this bill will give law enforcement another weapon in their arsenal to help in the process of prosecuting these predators. This bill has a very clear definition of what is obscene communication and its penalties. So if you look on page 1, line 15, let me see, as used in this section, I think that's important to know. We're gonna make a whole new section where we're gonna deal with, on page 2, defining obscenity, what it means. We have a list there. And then going on to page 3, we define the pattern of communication, which normally means 2 or more separate instances of communication with a minor. Personal and sexual gratification means communication that is intended to arouse or appeal to sexual desires, obtain sexual arousal or pleasure, elicit sexual response or reaction, and create or share sexually explicit content. Now, with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring out the Standing Committee amendment, and I'd like to divide it.
Oh, great.
And the reason I'd like to divide it is because we have 2 amendments. I think you moved it and had it read in already. So with your indulgence, I'd like to have, and if I have this right, if I don't, I'm sure I'll be told, lines 1 through 6 is Division 1, lines 13 through 15, Division 1, and 16 through 18 is Division 1, and the rest
Senator,
is Division 2.
Would you give me the last one there? I'm sorry,
16 through 18.
16 through 18, thank you.
Yes, and I'll explain why I'm doing that, because the second, the Committee of the Whole Amendment will address Amendment 2. And I'm thinking this might be a better way of doing it, is to pull that Division 2 out and then just deal with Division 1, because it's good. They're all good, but does that make sense to you?
Thank you. Proceed.
So
Okay, so-
you're gonna vote on everything but lines 7 through 12. That's gonna be Division 2. That's gonna be addressed in the second amendment, and if we take it out, it's not gonna make sense in the second amendment, because you'll see later how it makes
Okay,
sense.
so your motion is to vote on Division 2, lines 16 through 18.
We want to leave that in, and then we want to we want to keep lines, the Division 1, we want to vote yes on that and no on Division 2.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Any discussion?
Please.
Senator Case, sorry about that.
I am confused a little bit here, and the question is, we're being asked to divide this amendment because a subsequent amendment deals with the same area? Is that correct? But the LSO is very good about this. When they do a subsequent amendment, they will say, delete the standing committee amendment to this portion. And if you look at 189, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, indeed it says, delete entirely, include Senate Standing Committee in these lines and insert. So it's already designed to be cumulative. We don't really have to go through the whole deal of dividing it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Senator Hutchins.
Mr. Chair, he's exactly right. I was looking for that deleting the Standing Committee amendment to be at the top, so forgive me for doing that. So yeah, you can just vote on the Standing Committee amendment, and I'll walk you through that. At the section number, on page 4, where I stopped, at line 7 or 8, the Standing Committee added or after the word content. And on page 5, they deleted the H on line 1. These are all grammatical or technical errors or corrections. On line 1, at the very end there, you'll see a H, they inserted the letter G. And on page 5, after line 16, which is gonna go away, they inserted a comma after the word years. And then on page 6, they deleted entirely and renumbered lines 1 through 4, which is all good. And then on page 6, they deleted that entirely. And then, forgive me, on page 5, lines 20, they add, after the second offense, they inserted or subsequent. And then on 21, after the word years, delete and insert a comma. And on line 22, delete a semicolon and add a period. So this amendment is a good amendment to vote on. So if you want to vote on that now, that would be great. And then I'll continue with the bill.
Discussion on the amendment. Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Olson's motion to adopt the Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 189, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
Okay, back to
Motion
page
passes.
4. Back to page 4, when we get to lines 12, we have, except under these circumstances, we have some violations in our statutes, these laws, under soliciting. A person is guilty of sexual communication with a minor or purported minor if the person is not less than 18 years old. This is an exception, or older, and knowingly engages in a pattern of written, electronic, or verbal communication. Then, let me see. And then on lines 19 through 21, with a person who is less than the age of 18 years, or a person purported to be less than the age of 18 years. We have an exception was provided on page 5, where the actor is more than 4 years older than the victim. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I provided you with this in your box. It's just FYI information on why that 4 years of older is there. We also have that where communication includes obscene or verbal written descriptions or obscene images. And then in 4, when the actor engages in a pattern of communication for the purpose of personal sexual gratification. Now with that, Mr. Chairman, let's see, hopefully this isn't too hard for you all to follow. What we've done with the standing, or with the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1, I'd like to have that read in, because that will deal with the section that deals with the fines.
House Bill 189,
penalties.
Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to engrossed copy, page 5, lines 12 through 22, delete.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that amendment, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 189. What we're going to do here, because the committee seemed to have a problem with the way the bringer of the bill tiered the penalties. They said the first offense is a felony, and then the second offense, and then on like page 6 is the third offense. It seems like the committee had a problem with the tiers and wanted the penalty to be a range instead of tiered. So with this Committee of the Whole Amendment, we delete that portion on page 5, 12 through 22, and we insert a person convicted under subsection B of this section shall be guilty of a felony punishable by imprisonment for not more than 20 years, a fine of not less than $5,000 and not more than $10,000, or both. And with that, you can vote on the amendment now if you'd like. Thank you.
Discussion on the amendment.
Continue.
Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Olson's motion to adopt?
Hutchings.
Yeah. All those in favor of Senator Hutchings' motion to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 189, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Back on the bill.
All right, Mr. Chairman, on page 6, a person convicted under this section may be prohibited from using social media during any period of incarceration. The person convicted under this section shall be subject to forfeiture of the devices they use to communicate with the minor. We have a section here, F, a minor victim or minor's parents may have a legal guardian may file civil cause against that person for the minor. On G, on page 7, we have, this section shall not apply to any person who communicates or instructs about sexual matters in the course of an age-appropriate sex education curriculum program at any church, school, college, or university. Now, typically, Mr. Chairman, when you're working with a bill like this, you try to go to everybody that can help you craft this bill as best they can. Law enforcement was asked about Section 8, how they felt that should be crafted, that nothing in this section shall require law enforcement to notify the parent or legal guardian of a minor who reports a violation or is the victim of a violation of this section or any other connected violation of a Wyoming law if the parent or guardian is alleged to have been the party during the violation. This section shall also not apply to minors who are married to other minors. It doesn't apply to them. And then on page 9, we have the sex offender registry. This person is convicted. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to tell you the end of the story. The man that was caught with the notebooks, the binders, he ended up running for school board in a certain county. And while he was being investigated, he had to drop out of the race. He was found to have sexually abused 5 children. And he confessed to 3 and is now spending several years in prison for this. To me, Mr. Chairman, this is a very serious crime. And when I spoke to the people that were bringing the bill or had any, in any way helped with the bill, this bill will help at the beginning to stop, or hopefully stop, that lion, that tiger, or that wolf from preying on our children. And hopefully we can get a handle on it, Mr. Chairman. And with that, that's the bill.
Thank you, Senator. Discussion, Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, when I first read this bill, I really developed sort of a feeling of unease about this bill. And as I've read it again and looked through it, that's really coalesced into 2 areas, Mr. Chairman. First, there's an old saying, legislative saying, that the plural of anecdote is policy. And that really comes from people who say we don't have enough evidence for what we do sometimes. And in this case, we haven't even met the standard of having the plural. We're doing on 1 anecdote. And the question I have for the people in the room who know more about this than I do is, are the laws that are on the books now sufficient to deal with the people who do these things that are just awful? Are those laws sufficient? Do we really need to add this, or are those laws sufficient? So that's number 1 question. Second, when I looked at the specifics of what's forbidden, a good deal, I started to wonder about somebody who's in the medical business or somebody who is particularly a healthcare counselor and whatnot, would, in the process of their professional work with a minor that was having mental difficulties, as they made the adjustments of puberty, and that happens. In their professional work, they might well do a lot of the things that are outlined in this bill, but it looks like the protection against those people, or even a parent who may have been instructing their children, is on page 5, lines 8 through 10. When the actor engages in a pattern of communication for the purpose of personal sexual gratification. That's one of the elements of the crime that has to be proved. Is that element sufficient? My question really, Mr. Chairman, is aimed at the real attorneys in this Senate that have had some experience in dealing with some of these issues. Is that protection sufficient so that a mental health professional or parent should not fear that they might be swept up in this act for doing things that are really designed to help the child rather than hurt? And that's a question that I can't answer. I don't know how the court system works well enough to whether to know that that's an adequate protection. So, Mr. Chairman, those are the 2 questions I have on this bill. Is there sufficient need for it? And are particularly the professionals that are involved adequately protected when they're doing their professional work, Mr. Chairman?
Thanks, Senator Scott. Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So your committee number 1, Judiciary, dear senators, really wrestled with this bill. Obviously the intent behind this bill is very good. I don't think any one of us on the committee, and certainly I would doubt that anyone on this floor could disagree with the intent of this bill. The problem is in the construction of this bill. I just don't think we didn't have the time to make the number of amendments that would have been necessary for this bill really to get it to where it needs to be. There's a lot of issues with it. The first issue actually begins with page 2 in the definition of obscene, page 2, page 3. This bill goes in and creates an entirely new definition of obscene. Wyoming statute 6-4-301 has always provided in our criminal code a definition of obscene, and this bill, instead of using the existing definition in our criminal code is now creating a second definition for the same word, and so that raises some concern that if this bill were to move forward, we would definitely need to address that. There were some paragraphs that were miscited, and we had to clean that up. Hopefully we caught them all, though I'm not certain if we did or didn't. The Committee of the Whole amendment is substantially alters this bill. So if you go to page 5, the way this bill was crafted, it had a series of penalties based on offenses: first offense, second offense, third offense. The first offense for sending a text message to someone is a 5-year felony. That's pretty strict, but that's not what the bill does anymore. The bill deleted that lines 15 through 22 and now makes it a 20-year felony for sending a text message. The other thing that Committee of the Whole amendment did is it created somewhat of a mandatory minimum on the fine. It's got a not less than $5,000 fine, no more than $10,000 fine. That's not really common in Wyoming criminal code to create minimums like that. It's very uncommon. We tend to give our judges better discretion than bind them like that. So I think the Committee of the Whole amendment unfortunately put this bill even in a more confusing state as to whether it's ready to move forward or not. And then on page 7, subsection G is kind of this exception paragraph that tries to lay out, I think this addresses some of the questions from the good senator from Natrona County. We tried to lay out as many exceptions as we could, but I'm concerned that maybe we haven't come up with, it's hard to know whether you've come up with a complete list here or not. But have we thought of everything? It makes me really nervous. You know, at the last minute, we tried to put an amendment in here to protect instructors at colleges and universities, that if they were sharing information on a class that was being taught to actually protect children from predators, under the original bill, they would actually be felons. And I'm concerned about whether we've built in enough language to protect instructors at colleges and universities who are trying to protect children who may share information and will be now penalized with a 20-year felony. So, Mr. Chairman, I have a lot of questions still about this bill. If it moves forward, it's going to need some significant amendments. And I certainly would, anyone who wanted to address any of those concerns, I'd be happy to hear address them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further discussion? Senator Nethercott.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. To answer some of the questions from Bates Creek and further clarity, the case that is being presented as the study for this bill, the defendant involved got a 25 to 30-year prison sentence. So it's been addressed. Is there a need for this bill? Obviously, the scenario being presented to you was a very popular TV show about 20 years ago, where they used to catch a predator online and they did that. This is not a new concept for law enforcement or our criminal justice system. So the law does address this. There could be some further work being done, but unfortunately, this bill, and I've looked at it very carefully, I don't think is in a situation that can be amended. I am committed to helping the sponsor provide a more narrowly tailored bill in the future. So I'm on it against this bill. That would be constitutional. And good senators, the concern with these bills when we try to protect children concerning criminal defendants is that if we get it wrong, a very bad man goes free, or a very innocent man gets convicted. Those are the two outcomes that can happen with poorly written criminal legislation that has really big consequences to it. And the children involved may not get justice. And so that's a really high bar. The intent here, spot on. and I appreciate the effort of this legislator, but I do think that the risk here is very, very high for both the children, the innocent people, and those that are guilty. I would immediately do a constitutional challenge on the face of this bill for being overbroad and vague as trying to define obscenity, and I think I'd be successful on that. I don't think the bill is constitutional myself. And so I just want everyone to understand the consequences of getting this wrong, despite all of our efforts to maybe move it forward and trying to get along and compromise and make amendments. There's real people on the other side of this that could be really deeply affected.
Thank you. Any others? Senator Crago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to echo and give a very specific example, to echo the sentiments of the good speaker and the good attorney in the back of the room. We talked about this in committee. We struggled with this in committee. I mean, I think all of us, like my desk mate said, are supportive of the idea and what we're trying to get at right here and the problem we're trying to solve, but I think we're gonna create more problems. And one of the reasons I voted for it in committee is I thought, well, I'm gonna give myself a couple days and see if I can't figure out a way to fix the bill. I can't figure out a way to fix the bill. And one of the examples of unconstitutionality, and for anybody that's ever looked in the green books and start looking at all of our sexual assault and sexual assault of a minor laws, they're very complicated and they're very layered and they depend on ages, right? So currently in our statute, in our green books, if you're 21, you can have sexual relations with a 17-year-old. That is not against the law. But if you send them a text message, according to this bill, you would go to prison for 20 years. And so I think we're gonna have to regroup, narrow it down, find the right solution, not this overbroad solution that I agree with the good lawyer in the back of the room is gonna be found unconstitutional the second we send it out. And so just on and against the bill as it stands today. And especially after we added the 20-year felony, I think that creates an even bigger problem for the bill.
Thank you. Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate what we've heard from everybody, and I stand with them. There's good intent behind here. We always want to protect our children, but when I first read this, and especially the definitions on page 2 and 3, I was very concerned, even as the bill is structured, that, somebody might inadvertently do something just in maybe even describing, educating our kids on sexual things. And so I think we would be wise to get it right and not just pass it because the idea is good.
Thank you. Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is obviously an issue not only in the state, but across the country. And it is imperative that these predators are caught and charged before they do harm to these innocent children. I think that our law enforcement is looking for something in these cases where there's online predators that are doing this to our children. They're looking for something in statute that will take them right there. Because currently, I don't think that there is anything to protect those children in these instances. So we need to do the work. We need to do it right, yes, but let's not forget about these children that are being harmed by these things and that are victims of this, and they don't even know it's happening. They don't even know it's happening until it's too late. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was on the committee, we listened to this, and there's not a one that I know of that is in disagreement that we want to solve a problem. I mean, that's not the issue here. The issue is we write law. The issue is the things we do carries a huge amount of weight. And the issue is not one of us wants to do something incorrectly. And so here we sit talking about a bill that we can agree that we want to address a problem, but we're talking about a bill that is flawed in a way, for myself, would be irresponsible to pass it, to vote for it, because I have to answer to my constituents about why I decided to do something. And sometimes these things we do aren't easy to explain. I mean, obviously it doesn't sound great if you don't vote for something trying to protect children. It's not the issue here. We're writing law. We're doing things for many purposes, in this case, to do it right. I think the bill doesn't mesh with current law in the state of Wyoming, and that's the number one issue. The number two issue, I mean, I don't know what we want to do, electrocute them, you know, I mean, and it's a terrible offense to groom a young child for these purposes. But we have to work with the construct of our current law, the system we have in place, and this bill doesn't mesh. I think a lot of bills that are like this, that are big lifts, it takes a few attempts to get them right. And this bill's just not ready to be moved forward. It's just, there's too many parts of it that just don't work. And because of that, I'm not going to support the bill, and not because I don't support the idea or the thought or that we have to protect young people, but this bill falls short of where it needs to be. So on and against the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Landon.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to rise and speak to the issue of the protection of our kids, and just remind the body that the last 2 years, your Joint Judiciary Committee has spent quite a few hours on internet crimes against children. This body passed a couple of pieces of legislation on that front. And I just want to commend the folks over at the Division of Criminal Investigation in the state of Wyoming. We have dedicated individuals over there working on this every hour of every day. So I just don't want the public or all of us as senators to think that we're doing nothing about any of this. We're working diligently. Now, your Judiciary Committee, over that past 2 years' worth of work, came with the recommendation to our appropriations folks that we could probably use a little more help over there in that area. But we could use a lot of help in lots of areas. So, but I didn't want the misconception thrown out there that nothing is being done on this front. The question from my friend in Natrona County was a good one. And from what we found, we have good structural laws in place to handle what we're talking about tonight. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Case.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's almost 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. And Mr. Chairman, this bill came out of the committee with 5 votes positive. 2 of the members on that committee are now, and they're attorneys, and they're telling us that we shouldn't vote for this bill that has a lot of problems. The other attorney on the floor has also said we shouldn't vote for this bill because it has a lot of problems. The Senate is better than this. If this bill is important concept, it should go to interim and get addressed. Let's do the right thing now. Get her done before 5 o'clock.
Thank you. Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been awesome conversation on this bill. And you wouldn't believe how many people I've gone to on this floor to ask help with this bill. Some I thought were helping me. I guess they really weren't. But this is an issue that is going on in every county in Wyoming, every city in Wyoming. The good senator to my left, the good tall senator, he asked if this was sufficient. The laws we have. We have something in 64301, 646, they're all over the place. Law enforcement wants something like a one-stop shop when stuff like this happens. And that's what we were trying to do. Obviously, it's not sufficient, our laws, because it's happening and it's happening every day. It just hasn't happened to our children yet. I think that's the big issue. The construction of the bill. I have spent so much time looking at this bill and reading through it, really reading through it. And my desire was to give it a chance. And I don't mind people talking it down, that's fine. But we have little ones out there, and we're talking about constitutionality. I have looked at more laws in more states, and they're all the same. They want the same thing for our children. What may be considered constitutional is online conversation, online information, or a First Amendment, like free speech stuff for children. But this bill is talking about an adult with a pattern of communication toward young children with the whole intent on molesting that child. If we want to let that go another day, another year, another session, that is going to be on you guys. But this bill, I think, can be fixed. I tried to go along with what I heard from the Judiciary Committee, that they didn't like the tiered system of the laws, of the penalties. So I tried to fix it by putting in the range. If there's problems with people afraid of healthcare people or healthcare, or parents talking to their children about sex, I say let's try to fix it. This bill isn't saying that you can text someone and go to jail for 20 years. Not texting, but you have to have a pattern of behavior, and that's what I think is so important. Mr. Chairman, I've done my best with the lions, the tigers, and the wolves. Just know that they're coming into your into your homes, and I pray that this weekend, we're all safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Get you
Senator
guys
Olson.
home, get you home.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I just have to say one more thing. I know we're probably ready to vote and we want to move on, and it's Friday and it's almost 5 o'clock, but I think it's important that the public hear this and know that we have laws in the state of Wyoming that protect our children. 6-2-3118 is solicitation of a minor. That is a law that prohibits an adult from soliciting a minor, sending them messages, trying to lure them into a sexual act. If they do that, they are guilty of a felony. And they're guilty of a felony, that's a 5-year penalty. So I think there's two things that are really important about that law. One is that it exists in Wyoming and we are protecting children with that statute. And two is, think about that. It's a 5-year felony to actually go to the step of soliciting the minor. Whereas in this bill, it is a 20-year felony to just send images or a text message. So that they just don't match up. And so if it's something that we want to address down the line and really look at it as an interim topic, I don't think that's a bad idea, but I really think it's important that the public know and understand that we do have laws that protect our children.
Thank you. Senator Hutchings.
No, I get one quick question. I've heard this mentioned 3 times during the discussion of this bill. Interim topic, interim topic. I'll be glad to help the senator. Today's the last day for interim topics. I'd like to ask that the judiciary bring this up as an interim topic, if I can, on the floor. I would love to work with them and everybody else that thinks that we're gonna be cool until next year. Is that good? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Olson's motion that when committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 189, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. Yeah. All those in favor, please rise. Three.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please rise. Opposed, rise.
Opposed.
More than three.
Yep.
Let's see here, what do we got? Pursuant to SR 6-5, having failed a standing division vote, a roll call vote is required. The chief clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 189, Committee of the Whole, roll call. Anderson? No. Barlow? No. Boner? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper excused. Craigo? No. Crum? No. Dockstader? No. Driscoll? No. French? No. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Jones? No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Olson? No. Pappas? No. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Smith? No. Steinmetz? No. President Biteman? No. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 189, 4 aye, 26 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 189, having failed a roll call vote pursuant to SR 6-5A, is deemed indefinitely postponed. The next bill for our consideration. You've heard, let's see.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no? Motion carries. Mr. President, that must be your stuff. I'll slip it out here.
Committee of the Whole report.
Mr. President, your Committee of the Whole, having had under considerations bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 289 do pass. House Bill 242 do pass. House Bill 221 engrossed failed to pass Committee of the Whole and was indefinitely postponed. House Bill 72 engrossed do pass amended. House Bill 189 engrossed failed to pass Committee of the Whole and was indefinitely postponed. Senator Ide, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Senator Ide.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
All right, you've all heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Committee of the Whole report has been adopted. Thank you, Senator Ide. Signing of enrolled acts. Senate Enrolled Act number 22.
Senate Enrolled Act number 22, being original Senate File 64. Wyoming opposes mandatory electronic ID devices livestock, an act related to agriculture, livestock, and other animals.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 22, being original House Bill 64. I have so signed House Enrolled Act number 23.
House Enrolled Act number 23, being original House Bill 38, ad valorem taxation, payment, and credit of penalties, an act relating to ad valorem taxation.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 23, being original House Bill 38. I have so signed. Any messages from the House? Or, okay, we have some standing committee reports. Let's read those in.
Mr. President, the following reports are dated February 21, 2025. Committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred House Bill 103, Columbarium Regulation, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Crum, Hutchings, Scott, and Steinmetz. Senator Barlow, Chairman. Committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred House Bill 188, Two Families, One Nanny, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Crum, Hutchings, Scott, and Steinmetz. Senator Barlow, Chairman. Committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 207, Religious Freedom Restoration Act, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Craig, Crum, Hicks, Kolb, and Olson. Senator Olson, Chairman. Committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred House Bill 121, engrossed, Hospital Pricing Transparency, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Hutchings, Scott, and Steinmetz. No, Senator Crum. Senator Barlow, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. All right, Madam Majority Floor Leader, I think that clears the desk.
Mr. President, I move that we stand adjourned until Monday, February 24th at 10 a.m. 10 a.m.
10 a.m., Monday, February 24th. Announcements, Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Your committee number 7, Corporations, will begin again on Monday morning at 7:30 a.m. in the same old room, Capitol Extension W4. We're going to take up House Bill 218 engrossed, Public Utilities Stays During Resolution of Lawsuits. House Bill 79 engrossed, Bond Elections Voter Threshold Requirement. House Bill 144 engrossed, County Canvassing Board. House Bill 122 engrossed, Senior Citizen Service Districts Authorization and Renewal. House Bill 176 engrossed, Vacancies in Public Office Amendments. House Bill 190 engrossed, Bond Election Language Process. House Bill 249 engrossed, Runoff Elections. We're going to continue our meeting upon final adjournment as necessary. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you for all your work. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, Social Services, meets Monday, February 24th, noon recess, W110 to hear 4 bills. House Bill 164, engrossed, medical prescriptions, off-label purposes. House Bill 135, autologous and direct blood donations. And House Bill 96, engrossed, prohibiting mask, vaccine, and testing discrimination. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 5, Agriculture, State, and Public Lands and Water Resources, will meet next Tuesday, February 25th at 8 a.m. in the Capitol Extension Room 6 and online to consider the following 3 bills. House Bill 63, engrossed, Working Animal Protection Act. House Bill 90, engrossed, Anthrax Outbreak Protocol. And House Bill 224, engrossed, prohibiting foreign adversary property ownership.
Thank you. Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Senate Revenue Committee will meet Monday upon noon recess in room 06 to take up, finish House Bill 282, property tax acquisition value, and House Bill 123, engrossed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Education Committee number 4 will meet Monday morning at 7:30, not 8, 7:30 to hear 4 bills. House Bill 36 engrossed, Hathaway Scholarship Amendments, that's a continuation. House Bill 20, K through 12 School Facility Leasing. House Bill 94, Charter School Authorizations Amendments. And House Bill 148, University of Wyoming Governance Elected Trustees.
Thank you so much. Senator Olson.
Committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet Monday upon noon recess in W002 to consider 2 bills. House Bill 273, Wyoming Pregnancy Centers Autonomy and Rights, and House Bill 324, State Elected Officials, Employees at Will and Regulations.
Thank you. Any further announcements? You've all heard the Majority Floor Leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. The Senate will stand adjourned until Monday, February 24th at 10 a.m.